My daughter-in-law filed for a restraining order saying I was an abusive and violent mother-in-law. There I was, Evelyn, 70 years old, sitting in that cold courtroom, listening as Claudia invented stories about me in front of the judge. She said I hit her, that I screamed, that I terrified my own granddaughter. Lies, all lies. But what she didn't know, what no one in that room imagined, was that my granddaughter Alice, just 6 years old, had something saved on her pink tablet. Something Claudia had hidden so carefully. And when the judge asked her if she wanted to say anything, my little one raised her small hand and said in a trembling voice, "I can show something that Mommy hid." The judge nodded. Alice held up the tablet, her little fingers pressed play, and as the first images began to appear on the large courtroom screen, I saw Claudia's face transform from perfect tears to absolute paleness. She tried to get up. She tried to run, but it was already too late.
How did I get here? How did I go from being a happy grandmother to sitting in a courtroom defending my name? Let me go back 1 year when everything seemed perfect, when I still trusted her. I lived in the house I built with my husband Robert 45 years ago. A beautiful house with a large garden where I grew roses and jasmine. After Robert died 5 years ago, the house felt enormous and empty. The first few months were terrible. I would wake up expecting to hear his voice. I made coffee for 2 out of habit. But little by little I built a routine. My friends from the book club came on Tuesdays. On Thursdays, I went to the market. On Sundays, Sebastian, my only son, came to have lunch with me. Those Sunday lunches were my joy. Sebastian worked as an engineer at a construction company. He was 38 years old and had never found someone special until he met Claudia. I remember the day he introduced her to me perfectly. It was a spring Sunday 3 years ago. He arrived holding her hand, smiling in a way I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. Claudia was beautiful, I can't deny it. Long, dark hair, a bright smile, a lavender dress that highlighted her figure. She was 32 and worked as a manager at a boutique downtown. "Mom, this is Claudia," Sebastian said, his eyes shining. "She's the woman of my life." I wanted my son to be happy. He had been alone for so long. So I welcomed her with open arms. I prepared my best meal that day, roasted chicken with potatoes and a fresh salad from my garden. Claudia ate little, said she was watching her figure, but she praised everything. She asked me about the house, about the neighborhood, about how long I had lived there. Normal questions, I thought. Questions from someone interested in getting to know her boyfriend's family. They got married 6 months later. It was a small but elegant wedding in a garden near the river. Claudia looked radiant in her ivory dress. I cried with happiness seeing my son so in love. During the first year of marriage, everything seemed wonderful. They lived in an apartment 20 minutes from my house. They came to visit me every 2 weeks. Claudia always brought flowers or some store-bought dessert. She smiled, hugged me, called me Mom, Evelyn with sweetness. When she got pregnant, the excitement was immense. Sebastian was euphoric. I was going to be a grandmother for the first time. I bought baby clothes, knitted blankets, and prepared the guest room for when they came to visit with the baby. Alice was born on an autumn morning. She weighed 7 pounds. She had Sebastian's eyes and her mother's upturned nose. She was perfect. The first few months were chaotic for them. Claudia left her job to stay with the baby. Sebastian worked long hours to make up for the lost income. I offered to help. I went over 3 times a week to watch Alice while Claudia rested or ran errands. I loved holding that little girl, singing her the songs I used to sing to Sebastian when he was a baby. Claudia seemed grateful. She made me tea, we talked about recipes and parenting tips. Everything was harmonious. But then about a year ago, things started to change, subtly at first. Claudia started making strange comments. One day while I was rocking Alice in their living room, she said, "Mom, Evelyn, that big house you live in must be hard to maintain at your age. Have you thought about selling it and moving into something smaller? Maybe one of those nice condos for seniors?" I was surprised. I had no trouble maintaining my house. I had a gardener who came once a month and a woman who helped me with deep cleaning every 2 weeks. "No, dear," I replied calmly. "That house holds all my memories. It's where I raised Sebastian. I don't plan on moving." Claudia smiled, but something in her eyes changed. It was just for a second. A cold flash that disappeared so quickly I thought I had imagined it. After that, the visits became less frequent.
When I called to ask if I could see Alice, Claudia always had excuses. The girl was sick. They had plans. It wasn't a good time. Sebastian called me from work apologizing. Mom, Claudia is very stressed. Motherhood is hard. Give her time. I understood, or I tried to understand. But I missed my granddaughter. I missed those moments of connection. Then 8 months ago, everything changed drastically. Sebastian called me one night. His voice sounded tired and worried. Mom, we need to talk to you. Can we come over tomorrow? My heart sped up. Had something bad happened? Was Alice okay? The next day, all three arrived. Alice ran to me and hugged my legs. She had grown so much. She was already 5.5. She talked nonstop. Grandma, I missed you so much, she said in her sweet little voice. Sebastian and Claudia sat on the living room sofa. He took my hand. Mom, we lost the apartment. The owner sold the building and the new owners want to renovate. They gave us 30 days to move out. My first instinct was to help. Do you need money for a deposit on a new place? I have some savings. Sebastian shook his head. Mom, we've been looking. Everything is so expensive. Decent apartments cost $1,500 a month, plus deposit. We can't afford it right now. Claudia wants to go back to work, but daycare costs $800 a month. I looked at Claudia. She kept her eyes down, fiddling with her hands. What do you need? I asked directly. It was Claudia who spoke. Mom, Evelyn, I know it's a lot to ask, but this house has 4 bedrooms. You only use 1. Could we stay here temporarily? Just until we save enough for our own place. 3 months, 6 at the most. I looked at Sebastian. He nodded with hope in his eyes. It would be temporary. Mom, I promise. How could I say no? It was my son, my granddaughter. Of course I would help them. All right, I said finally. You can stay as long as you need. Claudia got up and hugged me. Thank you. Mom, you don't know what this means to us. But when she hugged me, I didn't feel warmth. I felt something calculated, something cold. They moved in a week later. They brought boxes and furniture. They took the 2 bedrooms on the 2nd floor, 1 for them and 1 for Alice. I gave them space. I tried to be the perfect mother-in-law. I didn't comment on their mess. I didn't complain when the music was loud. I cooked dinners for everyone. I watched Alice when they had to go out. The first few days were relatively calm. But soon I started noticing strange things. Claudia spent a lot of time in her room with the door closed, talking on the phone in a low voice. When I passed in the hallway, she would abruptly go silent. She started asking me for the house keys, saying she needed to make copies for emergencies. I agreed. One afternoon, I came home from the market and found her in my bedroom looking through my dresser drawers. Claudia, what are you doing in here? I asked, surprised. She jumped, clearly startled. Oh, Mom! Evelyn, I was looking for aspirin. I have a terrible headache. I pointed toward the bathroom. The medicine is in the bathroom cabinet, not in my bedroom. She smiled nervously. You're right, how silly of me. I must be really distracted. She left quickly, but I was left with an uneasy feeling in my stomach. After that incident, I started paying more attention. I noticed Claudia checking my mail. I saw her photographing documents I had left on the dining room table, the deed to the house bank statements. When I asked her why, she said she was helping me get organized. At your age, Mom, Evelyn, it's easy to lose important papers. I'm making digital copies so everything is safe. It sounded reasonable, but something inside me screamed that this was not right. Sebastian worked so much he was barely home. He left at 6 in the morning and returned at 8 at night. On weekends, he was exhausted. Claudia had completely taken over the house. She moved my things without asking. She changed the arrangement of the living room furniture. It's more modern this way, she'd say. She invited her friends over without telling me. She used my cooking ingredients and never replaced anything. When I tried to talk to Sebastian about it, he sighed tiredly. Mom, please. Claudia is stressed. We're all under pressure. Can you be more patient? I felt guilty. Maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe the problems were mine. But then 6 months ago, I heard something that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I had gone to the doctor for my routine checkup. The appointment was quicker than expected. I came home 2 hours early. When I opened the front door, I heard Claudia's voice coming from the kitchen. She was on the phone. Something in her tone made me stop. I stayed in the entryway without making a sound.
"I'm telling you, it's working," Claudia said in an excited voice. "The old woman trusts me completely. I already have copies of all the important documents. The deed to the house is in her name, but I've been doing some research. If we can manage to have her declared mentally incompetent, Sebastian, as the only son, can make decisions for her." My blood ran cold. What was she saying? "No, it's not that hard," Claudia continued. "We just need a doctor to certify that she has dementia or something. I've been documenting her forgetfulness. The other day she left the stove on. I made sure of that myself. I took pictures. There was also the incident where she supposedly got lost in the supermarket. Remember I told you, well, I gave her the wrong directions on purpose." There was a pause while the other person spoke. "The house is easily worth $450,000. It's in an area that's appreciating. Once it's ours, we sell it and we're gone. Sebastian doesn't even suspect a thing. He's so busy working he doesn't see what's happening right under his nose." I felt my legs tremble. I had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. "And what if the old woman resists?" Claudia asked the phone. There was silence as she listened to the reply. "Well, then we'll have to get more creative. Fabian, love, trust me. I've been planning this since before I even married Sebastian. Why do you think I chose him? It wasn't for his charm, I assure you. It was because I did my research. Only son, widowed mother with a valuable property. He was the perfect target." My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. "Fabian, who was?" "Fabian." Claudia had a lover. Had her entire marriage to my son been a lie from the beginning? Yes, I know, it's been a long time," Claudia continued impatiently. 3 years pretending to love that idiot. 3 years being the perfect wife, the perfect daughter-in-law. But we're almost done. I just need a little more time. Once I have the money from the house, I'll divorce him, take half of everything, and you and I will be off to Miami, just like we planned. Another pause. "The kid doesn't matter. Sebastian can have her. I never wanted to be a mother anyway. It was just part of the plan to seem more legitimate, more committed to the family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Alice, my sweet little granddaughter. Claudia was talking about her like she was a disposable object, like she didn't matter. I felt sick. I wanted to storm into the kitchen and confront her right then. But something stopped me. If I revealed I knew her plan, she would find another way. She would be more careful. I needed proof. I needed to protect my son and my granddaughter. With trembling hands, I silently backed out of the house. I closed the door without a sound and walked to the corner. I sat on a park bench trying to process what I had just heard. My whole life, I had been an elementary school teacher. I taught for 40 years. I knew people. I knew how to tell when a child was lying or when something was wrong in their family life. But this had happened right under my nose, and I didn't see it coming. I had been completely fooled. Claudia had acted her part masterfully for 3 years. Every smile, every hug, every kind word had been a calculated lie. And now she was living in my house, sleeping under my roof, eating my food, while planning to steal everything from me and destroy my family. I took a deep breath. I couldn't fall apart. I was 70, yes, but I wasn't senile. I wasn't helpless. If Claudia wanted to play dirty, she would have to face someone who had survived much more than her. I had raised a son alone after Robert died. I had maintained my house, my finances, my dignity. I was not going to let this woman take everything I had worked for. I took out my phone and called Sandra. Sandra had been my best friend for 20 years. We met at the book club and discovered we had a lot in common. She had been a lawyer before retiring. If anyone could advise me, it was her. "Evelyn, what's wrong?" "You sound upset," Sandra said when she answered. "Sandra, I need to see you, urgently. Can you come to the park near my house?" "I'm on my way. Give me 10 minutes. When Sandra arrived, I told her everything. Every word I had heard, every suspicion I'd had. Sandra listened, her expression growing more serious by the minute. When I finished, she took my hands. "Evelyn, this is serious. Very serious. We're talking about fraud conspiracy, possibly attempting to have you falsely declared incompetent. But we need solid proof before we make any move." "What should I do?" I asked, feeling lost. Sandra thought for a moment.
First, you cannot let Claudia know you suspect anything. You have to act completely normal. Second, we need to document everything, every strange conversation, every suspicious move. Third, tomorrow morning, we're going to my old firm. I have a colleague who still practices Paul. He's excellent in family fraud cases. He'll help you. And Sebastian? I asked, my voice breaking. When do I tell him? Sandra squeezed my hands firmly. Not yet. Sebastian is emotionally involved. If you tell him now, he might confront Claudia or worse, not believe you. She has spent 3 years manipulating him. We need irrefutable proof first. I nodded, though my heart ached. I was going to have to pretend. I was going to have to smile and act like nothing was wrong while my daughter-in-law planned my destruction. I went back home an hour later. Claudia was in the living room watching TV. "Hi, Mom Evelyn. How was the doctor?" she asked in her usual sweet voice. It took all my strength not to tremble with rage. "Everything's fine, dear, just routine," I replied with a smile I hoped looked natural. "Where's Alice?" "In her room playing. Want to make dinner together? I bought ingredients for lasagna." I accepted. We cooked together that night. Claudia chatted animatedly about trivial things. I nodded, smiled, responded. But inside, I was cold as ice. I watched her every gesture, every look, trying to figure out what else she was planning. The next day, Sandra picked me up early. I told Claudia we were going shopping. At the law firm, Paul greeted me with professional warmth. He was a man in his 50s, gray hair at the temples, an intelligent gaze. I told him the whole story again. He took meticulous notes. "Mrs. Evelyn, what you're describing is severe. If Claudia is indeed planning to have you fraudulently declared incompetent and take your property, we are looking at several crimes. We need to build a solid case." "How?" I asked anxiously. Paul leaned back in his chair. "First, we're going to protect your assets. Today, we'll get a full medical evaluation with a neuropsychologist I trust. This will establish that you are in full command of your mental faculties. Second, we need evidence of Claudia's intentions. Do you have any way to record conversations in your house? I hesitate. I don't know if that's legal. In this state, it is legal to record conversations on your own property as long as one party in this case, you, is present or has given consent. But there's a more useful way." Paul explained his plan. "We could install discrete security cameras in the common areas of my house. Many seniors use them for safety, so it wouldn't raise suspicion. Tell Claudia that after your doctor's visit, he recommended installing cameras just in case you have a medical emergency when you're alone. It's completely believable." It was brilliant. Sandra smiled. "Paul, that's why you were the best." That same afternoon, a technician came to install 3 small cameras. One in the living room, one in the kitchen, one in the second-floor hallway. Claudia arrived just as the technician was finishing. "What is this?" she asked, frowning. "The doctor recommended I get them for safety," I explained casually. "At my age, if I fall or have an emergency when I'm alone, the cameras have motion detection and send alerts. Besides, with you guys living here, it's good to have extra security in case of burglars when we're all out." I saw the conflict on her face. She couldn't object without seeming suspicious. "Of course, Mom. That's a very sensible decision," she said finally, though her eyes glinted with annoyance. Over the next few weeks, I pretended to be the distracted, forgetful grandmother Claudia wanted everyone to believe I was. I left my keys in strange places on purpose. I forgot the names of people I knew well when Claudia was present. I repeated stories I had just told, all of it calculated to make her feel confident. But secretly, I was building my case. The cameras captured everything, and what they recorded was worse than I imagined. 3 days after they were installed, the cameras showed Claudia moving things around when I left the room. She would hide my glasses. She switched my medications between bottles. One time we recorded her turning off the stove just before I walked into the kitchen, then feigning concern, telling me I had left it on all morning. "Mom, Evelyn, this is dangerous. What if you start a fire?" she'd say with false anguish while Sebastian watched with concern. But I knew the truth. She had turned the stove on herself just minutes before. The worst came one night when Sebastian was working late. I was in my room reading. I heard voices in the hallway. I crept to the door and opened it a crack. Claudia was on the phone again, pacing back and forth in front of the hallway camera. "Fabian, darling, I have almost everything ready. I've been collecting evidence of her supposed dementia. I have a doctor who for $3,000 is willing to sign a document saying he evaluated her and that she has severe cognitive decline. He's not her real doctor, obviously, but with the hospital logo, it looks legitimate." My stomach twisted. "The problem is Sebastian," Claudia continued. "He's been asking questions lately. Yesterday he asked me why his mom seems so confused all of a sudden. I told him it's just her age, that it's normal, but I need to speed up the plan before he starts to suspect." There was a pause. "Yes, I already spoke to the crooked lawyer you recommended. He says with the fake medical documents and some fabricated testimonies, we can start the guardianship process. Once Sebastian is declared her legal guardian due to incapacity, I, as his wife, will have access to everything. I'll sign whatever is necessary in her name. We'll sell the house before anyone can question it." I felt my legs shaking. This was so much worse than I thought. She didn't just want to rob me, she wanted to destroy my autonomy completely. She wanted to lock me in a nursing home, or worse. The next day, I took the recording to Paul. He watched it with a grim expression. "This is enough to initiate legal action. We have conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery of medical documents, and possibly more. But Evelyn, I need to ask you something difficult. Are you ready for this to explode publicly? Once we act, there's no turning back. Your family is going to be torn apart." I looked Paul straight in the eye. "My family is already destroyed. Claudia took care of that. Now I just want to protect my son and my granddaughter from this viper." Sandra, who was sitting next to me, intervened. "Paul, there's something else. Evelyn heard Claudia mention she never wanted Alice, that the child was just part of the plan. What happens to custody when all this comes out? If we prove Claudia is a con artist and that the marriage was fraudulent from the start, Sebastian will have every advantage in a divorce. Custody of Alice will stay with him. Claudia will have no rights to anything." It was what I needed to hear. "But there's one problem. When do we tell Sebastian?" I asked, my heart heavy. Paul sighed. "Soon. Very soon. But first we need to ensure Claudia can't flee or destroy evidence. Give me 1 more week to prepare everything. In the meantime, you keep acting normal." That week was the longest of my life. Every day I pretended to be the forgetful grandmother while Claudia smiled and planned my destruction. But I was planning too. With Paul, we prepared all the documentation, the camera recordings, the neuropsychological evaluation proving I was perfectly sane. Research on this Fabian, who turned out to be a con man with a criminal record for fraud. Phone records between him and Claudia. Everything was falling into place. But then Claudia sped up her plan. One afternoon, she came home with a woman she introduced as a social worker. "Mom, Evelyn, this is Mrs. Miller. Sebastian and I are worried about you. We want to make sure you're receiving the proper care." This Mrs. Miller asked me strange questions about my daily routine, my finances if I felt safe in my own home. I answered everything carefully, knowing this was part of Claudia's plan to have me declared incompetent. When they left, I immediately called Paul. "They're moving faster," he said urgently. "That woman probably works with the crooked lawyer Claudia mentioned. Evelyn, we need to act now. Tomorrow morning we are filing a formal complaint with the authorities and requesting a restraining order against Claudia." But that night things got even worse. Sebastian came home looking devastated. We sat in the living room, Claudia by his side with a fake look of concern. "Mom," Sebastian began, his voice trembling, "we need to talk about your health. Claudia showed me videos of you doing dangerous things, leaving the stove on, losing things, forgetting conversations. I'm very worried." I looked at Claudia. She met my gaze with an almost imperceptible smirk. She had edited the camera recordings showing him only the parts where I looked confused, deleting the sections where she herself caused those incidents. It was brilliant and evil. "Son," I said calmly, "I am perfectly fine. Those incidents are being taken out of context." Claudia interrupted, her voice soft but firm. "Mom, Evelyn, I know it's hard to accept, but dementia is like that. The people who have it don't realize it. That's why Sebastian and I have decided it's best for you to be evaluated by a specialist. We already have an appointment for tomorrow." I froze. This was her final move, the crooked doctor she mentioned on the phone. "I'm not going anywhere," I said firmly. Sebastian took my hand. "Mom, please. It's just an evaluation. If everything is fine, great. But we need to be sure. Besides, Claudia and I have been talking. This house is a lot for you. Maybe you should consider moving somewhere with assistance. We can sell the house and use the money to pay for a nice, comfortable facility." There it was, the whole plan right on the table. My son completely manipulated, suggesting exactly what Claudia had been plotting from the beginning. I looked at Sebastian and saw in his eyes that he truly believed he was helping me. He believed he was protecting his sick mother. Claudia had poisoned him perfectly against me. "Sebastian," I said, my voice clear and strong, "I am not sick, and I am not selling my house. This conversation is over." I got up and went to my room. I heard Claudia whisper something to Sebastian. Their voices grew louder. He was confused she was insisting. I couldn't sleep that night. I knew Claudia was about to make her final play. I called Paul at 2 a.m. "Paul, we have to act tomorrow. Claudia is going to try to take me to a fake doctor. If I sign anything under pressure or deception, I could lose everything." "Understood," Paul replied, immediately awake and alert. "First thing tomorrow, we present everything to the judge. I'm also going to contact Sebastian directly. He needs to know the truth before it's too late." The next morning, everything exploded. Paul called Sebastian and asked him to come to his office urgently. Sebastian, confused, agreed. In that meeting, Paul showed him everything. The complete camera recordings showing Claudia manipulating situations. The recordings of her calls with Fabian planning the fraud. The evidence of the crooked doctor. Her lover's criminal record. Sebastian was in absolute shock. Sebastian left that office shattered. Paul called to tell me, "Evelyn, your son is processing everything. He's in shock, furious, confused. I asked him not to confront Claudia yet. We need to handle this legally first." But my son couldn't hold back. That same afternoon, he came home shaking with rage. I was in the kitchen making tea when I heard the door fly open. "Where is she?" Sebastian yelled in a voice I had never heard from him. Claudia came downstairs looking confused. "Sebastian, what's wrong?" "What's wrong?" he repeated with bitter sarcasm. "What's wrong? You're really asking me that. Does Fabian sound familiar? Or the plan to declare my mother senile to steal her house? Or the crooked doctor you were going to pay $3,000? I saw Claudia's face change from feigned confusion to real panic in seconds. "Sebastian, I don't know what you're talking about. Who told you those lies?" "They're not lies," he roared. "I saw everything. The recordings, the calls, everything. I met your lawyer. Paul showed me every piece of evidence. Our entire marriage was a sham. You never loved me. You just wanted my mother's money." Claudia took a step back. Her eyes darted around, calculating. "Honey, listen to me. Someone is trying to tear us apart. Your mother is behind this. She never accepted me. She's making it all up because she doesn't want us to be happy." Sebastian laughed bitterly. My mother who opened her home to us. The woman who cared for our daughter while you plotted to destroy her. No. Claudia, this is over. I want you to pack your things and get out of this house right now." Claudia switched tactics immediately. Tears began to stream down her cheeks. "Sebastian, please think about Alice. Think about our family. I made mistakes. I admit it. But we can get through this. I can change." "Change?" Sebastian looked at her with contempt. "You've been acting for 3 years, lying every single day. You used our daughter as part of your plan. You said you never wanted her, that she was just a tool to look more legitimate." Claudia turned pale. She didn't know that conversation had been recorded, too. I never said that. I love my daughter." "Enough," I interrupted finally. I had been watching from the kitchen doorway. "Claudia, you have 1 hour to pack your essentials and leave my house. We will send the rest of your things later, but you will not spend one more night under this roof." Claudia looked at me with pure hatred in her eyes. The sweet, loving daughter-in-law was gone. "This isn't over, you stupid old woman. I have rights. I'm Sebastian's wife. This house is mine too." "Actually, it's not," said a voice from the entryway. It was Paul who had arrived with Sandra. "The house is solely in Mrs. Evelyn's name. You have no claim to this property, and if you don't leave voluntarily, we will call the police for trespassing." Claudia looked at all of us with impotent fury. Then she stormed up the stairs. We heard her violently opening and closing drawers in her room. Alice appeared just then, coming down the stairs, rubbing her eyes. "Why is everyone yelling?" my granddaughter asked in a scared little voice. Sebastian scooped her up immediately. "Everything is okay, Princess. Mommy and Daddy are just having a difficult conversation." Alice looked at her father with those big, intelligent eyes. "Mommy is going away." We all fell silent. The child knew more than we thought. Half an hour later, Claudia came down with 2 suitcases. She didn't look at anyone. She walked straight to the door. But before leaving, she turned back to me. "You're going to regret this. I swear it." And she left, leaving a heavy silence behind. That night, Sebastian sat in the living room until very late. I came down to sit with him. "Mom, I am so sorry," he said in a broken voice. "I didn't see any of it. I was so blind. I failed you." I sat next to him and took his hand. "You didn't fail me, son. Claudia was a professional manipulator. She fooled all of us. The important thing is that now we know the truth and we can protect Alice." "How could I be so stupid?" he lamented. "I thought she loved me. I planned a future with her, and it was all a lie from day one." There were no words that could ease that pain. I could only be there, hold his hand, and let him grieve the marriage that never really existed. But Claudia didn't give up easily. 2 days later, we received a legal notice. She was suing for divorce and asking for full custody of Alice, plus financial compensation and alimony. Paul read the documents with a serious expression. "She's playing hardball. She knows she has nothing, so she's trying to scare you into a settlement." "How bad can this get?" Sebastian asked anxiously. "She has no real proof against your mother. We have all the evidence of her fraud, but legal processes can be long and painful. Be patient." Over the next few weeks, Claudia intensified her attacks. She hired an aggressive lawyer who started making increasingly wild accusations. First, she said I had been abusive to her the entire time they lived in my house. Then she alleged Sebastian was a negligent father. Finally, she filed for a restraining order against me, claiming I was violent and a danger to Alice. It was absurd, completely false. But the legal system had to investigate every claim. I had to undergo psychological evaluations. Sebastian had to do the same. They interviewed neighbors, friends, anyone who had been near our family. It was humiliating and exhausting. The worst part was when they temporarily limited my contact with Alice while they investigated the abuse claims. I couldn't see my granddaughter. I couldn't talk to her. Claudia had managed to use the system against us to punish me. I cried many nights thinking about Alice, wondering what Claudia was telling her about me. If she was scared. If she thought her grandmother had abandoned her. Sebastian kept me updated. "Alice asks for you every day, Mom. I tell her she'll see you soon. She doesn't understand why you can't visit." My heart broke every time I heard that. Sandra was my rock during that time. She came over every day. She brought me food when I didn't feel like cooking. She forced me to go for walks when all I wanted to do was stay in bed. "Evelyn, you can't let Claudia see you weak. You have to stay strong. The truth is going to come out." And then the summons for the restraining order hearing arrived. I would have to go to court and defend myself against Claudia's accusations. Paul meticulously prepared our case. We had all the recordings, all the testimonies, all the evidence of her fraud. "Claudia is going to lie under oath," Paul warned me. "She's going to cry, she's going to play the victim. But we have the truth on our side." The morning of the hearing, I dressed in my best pearl gray suit. I wanted to look dignified, respectable. Sandra came with me. Sebastian would also be there with Alice, as the judge had requested her presence. When we arrived at the courthouse, I saw Claudia for the first time in weeks. She was dressed conservatively, no excessive makeup, looking like a worried, scared mother. We entered the courtroom. The atmosphere was cold, formal, intimidating. The walls were light beige. There were rows of dark wooden benches.
The judge's bench dominated the front of the room. I sat at the defense table with Paul by my side. Claudia was at the opposite table with her lawyer, a man in a black suit who looked like a shark. Sebastian entered holding Alice's hand. My granddaughter was wearing a peach-colored dress and her favorite glittery shoes. When she saw me, her eyes lit up. "Grandma," she whispered excitedly, trying to pull away from her father to run to me. But Sebastian held her gently. "Wait, princess, not yet." Alice looked confused, but she obeyed. They sat in the front row behind us. I saw Claudia glance at the girl with a strange expression. It wasn't motherly love. It was more like annoyance at her presence. The judge entered. He was a man in his 60s, completely white hair, a serious, but not unkind expression. "Court is in session. Case number 234567, Claudia Moreno versus Evelyn Vargas. Request for a restraining order." Claudia's lawyer stood up first. "Your Honor, my client has suffered systematic emotional and psychological abuse at the hands of the defendant, her mother-in-law. During the months they lived under the same roof, Mrs. Vargas displayed aggressive, threatening, and destabilizing behaviors. My client fears for her safety and that of her young daughter." It was unbelievable to hear those words. Me, who had opened my home, who had cared for her child, who had tried to help at every turn. The lawyer continued. "Furthermore, Your Honor, we have concerns about Mrs. Vargas's mental health. She has shown signs of dementia, erratic behavior, dangerous forgetfulness. She is not safe to be around a minor." Paul stood up immediately. "Objection, Your Honor. The plaintiff has presented no medical evaluation to support these claims. In fact, we have complete evaluations proving my client is in full command of her mental faculties." The judge nodded. "Sustained. Proceed with testimony." Claudia was called to the stand. She swore to tell the truth with her hand on the Bible. The irony. She began her masterful performance. With a trembling voice, she described a home filled with tension. She said I criticized her constantly, that I insulted her when Sebastian wasn't around, that I had tried to drive a wedge between her and her husband from the beginning. "Living with her was a nightmare," Claudia said, wiping away tears that looked real. "Every day she told me I wasn't good enough for her son, that Alice would be better off without me as a mother. She would hide my things. She made me feel like I was losing my mind." It was the exact opposite of what she had done to me. She was projecting her own crimes onto me. Her lawyer asked, "Did Mrs. Vargas ever get physically aggressive with you?" Claudia hesitated for just a second, calculating. "Yes. One time she pushed me against the wall when I confronted her about leaving the stove on. I have pictures of the bruises. A lie. A total and complete lie. And—" Paul scribbled notes quickly. When the direct examination ended, it was Paul's turn to cross-examine. "Mrs. Claudia, you mentioned my client pushed you. Did you report this alleged assault to the police?" Claudia blinked. "No. I was afraid of making the situation worse." "I see. And the photographs of the bruises you mentioned, can you show them to the court?" "I have them on my phone. I can send them. Please do so now." There was a moment of panic in Claudia's eyes. I don't have my phone with me." "How convenient," Paul said dryly. "Mrs. Claudia, do you know a man named Fabian Contreras?" Claudia's face went pale. I don't know who that is." "Are you sure? Because we have phone records showing you called him 347 times in the last 6 months. We also have text messages between you." Claudia's lawyer shot up. "Objection, Your Honor." "What relevance does this have?" "The relevance," Paul explained calmly, "is that it demonstrates the witness's character and credibility. If Mrs. Claudia is lying about her relationship with Mr. Contreras, what else is she lying about?" The judge considered. "Overruled. Continue." Paul approached Claudia. "Mrs. Claudia, is it true that you and Mr. Fabian Contreras plan to defraud my client? Is it true that your marriage to Sebastian Vargas was motivated solely by financial interest in your mother-in-law's property?" "That's ridiculous," Claudia said, but her voice was shaking. "Is it ridiculous? Then perhaps you can explain this recording." Paul gave a signal. On the large courtroom screen, the audio of Claudia talking to Fabian began to play, her voice clear and unmistakable. "The old woman trusts me completely. I already have copies of all the important documents. The deed to the house is in her name, but I've been doing some research. If we can manage to have her declared mentally incompetent, Sebastian, as the only son, can make decisions for her." The silence in the room was absolute. All eyes were on Claudia. Her face had gone from white to red. That was taken out of context," she tried to stammer. "Out of context." Paul played more. The part where Claudia said she never loved Sebastian. The part where she said Alice didn't matter. The part where she described her detailed plan to sell the house and flee with the money. With every second of audio, Claudia sank lower in her chair. Her lawyer looked furious. Clearly, she had not told him the truth about the situation. "Your Honor," Paul said, turning to the judge, "we also have video recordings from the security cameras in my client's home that show Mrs. Claudia manipulating situations to make it seem my client was confused or dangerous. Mrs. Claudia would turn on the stove and then accuse my client of leaving it on. She would hide objects and then claim my client had lost them. It was all a calculated plan to have her declared incompetent and steal her property." The judge looked at Claudia with a severe expression. "Mrs. Claudia, these are very serious allegations. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Claudia opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She was trapped. All her lies, all her manipulations had been exposed in front of the court. Her lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, I request a recess to consult with my client." "Denied," the judge said firmly. "This hearing will continue. Mrs. Claudia, I order you to respond. Are those recordings authentic?" Claudia looked around desperately. She looked at where Sebastian was sitting. My son was watching her with a mixture of pain and disgust. She glanced at the door as if calculating whether she could escape. I can explain," she finally stammered. "Things got out of control. At first I just wanted to make sure my family was financially secure, but then—" "So you admit you plan to defraud my client?" Paul interrupted. Claudia fell silent. The judge stepped in. "Mrs. Claudia, I remind you that you are under oath. Lying to this court constitutes perjury, which is a criminal offense. I am asking you directly. Did you plan to have Mrs. Evelyn Vargas declared incompetent in order to seize her property?" There was a long silence. Finally, Claudia whispered, "Yes." A murmur went through the room. The judge banged his gavel. "Order!" I looked at Claudia and saw a completely defeated woman. Her perfect plan had collapsed. Paul continued, "Your Honor, in addition to the recordings, we have evidence that Mrs. Claudia contacted a doctor willing to falsify a psychiatric evaluation for $3,000. We have text messages where she discusses this plan. We also have proof of her extramarital affair with Fabian Contreras, who has a criminal record for real estate fraud." Claudia's lawyer stood up again. "Your Honor, my client clearly needs time to—" "Your client needs a criminal lawyer," the judge cut in sharply. "What I have heard here today goes far beyond a simple restraining order. We are talking about conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery of documents, perjury before this court." He turned to Claudia. "Mrs. Claudia, not only am I denying your request for a restraining order, but I am ordering a full criminal investigation into your actions. Furthermore, based on the evidence presented, I am granting temporary full custody of the minor child to the father, Mr. Sebastian Vargas." Claudia finally reacted. "No, you can't take my daughter from me." "You yourself admitted on tape that you never wanted the child, that she was just part of your plan," the judge said coldly. "It was then that something happened that no one expected." Alice stood up from her seat. My 6-year-old granddaughter walked to the front of the courtroom with determined steps, holding her pink tablet against her chest. We all stared in surprise. "Mr. Judge," Alice said in her clear little voice, "I can show something that Mommy hid." The judge leaned forward, intrigued. "What do you have there, young lady?" "My tablet. It has videos." Claudia's lawyer immediately objected. "Your Honor, this is irregular. The minor should not be participating in—" "I want to see what the child has found," the judge interrupted. "Approach the bench, young lady." Alice walked up to the stand. Claudia stood up abruptly. "No, Alice, give me that right now." Her voice had lost all its sweetness. It was harsh, desperate, threatening. "Sit down, Mrs. Claudia." the judge ordered with authority. "Officer, please ensure she does not interfere." A security officer moved to stand near Claudia, who sank back into her chair, her face a mask of pure panic. The judge took the pink tablet from Alice's hands. "Do you know how this works, sweetie?" "Yes, Mr. Judge. I recorded it all. Mommy doesn't know." My heart stopped. Alice had recorded something. What had my little granddaughter seen? The judge pressed play on the first video. The large courtroom screen came to life again. The image showed the inside of my house, specifically the kitchen. The camera was clearly hidden. Alice had probably left the tablet recording from a shelf. The video showed Claudia alone in the kitchen. She was taking my blood pressure pills and replacing them with different pills from a bottle she took from her purse. Then she put my real pills into her own pocket. "Oh my God," I whispered. She had been giving me the wrong medication. That explained why I had felt dizzy those few weeks ago. The next video was worse. It showed Claudia in the living room talking on the phone with someone. Yes, I already have the name of the nursing home. It costs $2,000 a month. Once we have her declared incompetent and sell the house, there will be enough money to pay for the home for years while we enjoy the rest. We won't even have to visit her. Sebastian let out a pained sound from his seat. He had loved this woman. He had built a life with her, and it was all a lie. But the most devastating video came last. It was recent, from only 2 weeks ago. It showed Claudia in Alice's room leaning over the child who was in her bed. Claudia's voice was cold, cruel. "Alice, listen to me. Your grandmother is a bad woman, a very bad woman. She doesn't love you. She only pretends to. When I get her taken away, you are going to tell the judge that your grandmother scares you. Do you understand? You're going to say she yells and that she hits you." "But Grandma never hits me," Alice's confused voice answered in the video. "She loves me." "You are a stupid little girl," Claudia yelled in the recording. "Your grandmother is old and going to die soon anyway. What matters is that you and I get money. So you are going to do exactly what I tell you, or you will be very sorry." "But I love my grandma," Alice insisted, her voice now tearful. "I don't care what you want." Claudia grabbed Alice's arm tightly. "You will obey me, or I will send you away to a boarding school where you will never see your grandmother or your father ever again." "Do you want that?" Alice was sobbing in the video. "No, Mommy, please no." "Then you'll do as I say. And if you tell anyone about these conversations, especially your father, things will get very bad for you." The video ended. The courtroom was in complete silence. I had tears streaming down my cheeks. My baby, my little granddaughter, had been suffering this psychological abuse, and no one knew. Sebastian was crying openly. He stood up and walked to Alice, picked her up, and held her tightly against his chest. "I'm sorry, Princess. I'm so sorry." "Daddy didn't know." Alice clung to his neck. "Mommy scared me, Daddy, but I couldn't tell you because she said she'd send me away." The judge was looking at Claudia with an expression that could only be described as absolute disgust. "Mrs. Claudia, in my 30 years on this bench, I have seen many terrible things, but threatening and psychologically manipulating a 6-year-old child to lie in a legal proceeding is among the most despicable things I have ever witnessed." Claudia finally broke down. The tears falling down her face now were of real despair, not an act. I didn't want to hurt her. I just needed the money. I have debts. Fabian and we had plans. I was going to start a new life." "At the cost of destroying this family," the judge asked harshly. "At the cost of traumatizing your own daughter. At the cost of trying to rob a 70-year-old woman of everything she has." Claudia had no answer. The judge continued. "There are more videos," Alice said quietly. "Lots more. Mommy didn't know my tablet can record even when the screen is off. I left it in places where she was talking." The judge looked through the tablet. There were dozens of videos. Some showed Claudia talking to Fabian in person when they met at coffee shops. Others showed her practicing how she would act in court, rehearsing her tears in the mirror. There was one particularly disturbing one where Claudia told Fabian, "The old woman has to disappear eventually. If Plan A doesn't work, there are always ways to make it look like an accident.
Old people fall all the time." Paul stood up. "Your Honor, that is a direct threat against my client's life. This goes beyond fraud. We are talking about potential conspiracy to commit murder." The judge nodded gravely. "I agree. Officer, take Mrs. Claudia into custody immediately. She is under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, perjury, child abuse, and criminal threats. There will be no bail." 2 officers approached Claudia. She finally went into a full-blown panic. She jumped up and tried to run for the exit. "No, you can't do this. I have rights." The officers caught her before she reached the door. They restrained her as she screamed and thrashed. "Let me go! This is unfair! Evelyn set me up. She planned all of this." "Mrs. Claudia," the judge said in a firm voice, "the evidence speaks for itself. You planned every step of your scheme. Mrs. Evelyn simply defended herself by documenting your crimes." As the officers dragged her from the courtroom in handcuffs, Claudia looked at me with pure hatred. "This isn't over. I will find a way to destroy you." "Add verbal threats to the charges," the judge said dryly. When the door closed behind Claudia, I felt a huge weight lift from my shoulders. The judge turned to me. "Mrs. Evelyn, I am deeply sorry for what you have had to endure. It is clear that you are the victim here, not the aggressor. The restraining order is not only denied, but I am issuing a permanent restraining order against Mrs. Claudia. She is not to come within 500 yards of you or your property." "Thank you, Your Honor," I said, my voice trembling. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I am ordering full and permanent custody of the minor child Alice Vargas to the father, Sebastian Vargas. The mother's custodial and visitation rights are terminated until she is evaluated by mental health professionals and deemed not to be a danger to the child. Given the documented psychological abuse, I anticipate that evaluation will not be favorable." Sebastian hugged Alice tighter. Tears of relief streamed down his face. The judge looked at Alice kindly. "Young lady, you were very brave to show us those videos. You helped protect your grandmother and yourself. You knew what you were doing was important." Alice nodded. "Grandma always tells me to tell the truth even when it's hard. Mommy asked me to lie, but I didn't want to lie." "You are a very special girl," the judge said with a smile, "and very smart. Your grandmother must be very proud of you." I stood up and walked over to Alice. Sebastian passed her to me, and I hugged my granddaughter with all my strength. "I am so proud of you, my love. So proud." "I don't have to go away, Grandma." "No, sweetie, never. You're going to stay with Daddy and me forever." Paul came over and put a hand on my shoulder. "Evelyn, the judge is also referring this case to the district attorney. Claudia is going to face serious criminal charges. She will likely spend several years in prison." "And Fabian?" I asked. "He will also be investigated and likely arrested as an accomplice. They are not getting away with this." The hearing ended. We walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. Sandra was waiting outside and hugged me tightly. "You did it, Evelyn. You beat her." "It wasn't just me," I said, looking at Alice, who was now holding her father's hand. "It was my brave granddaughter." The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal activity. Paul worked tirelessly preparing all the documentation to ensure Claudia faced the full consequences of her actions. The criminal investigation moved quickly. The police arrested Fabian Contreras 2 days after the hearing. They found him in a cheap motel near the border trying to flee the country. When they interrogated him, he tried to blame Claudia for everything, saying she was the mastermind and he had just followed her instructions. A coward to the very end. They also arrested the crooked doctor who had been willing to falsify the psychiatric evaluation. It turned out he had a history of fraudulent practices and was already under investigation for other similar cases. The web of corruption Claudia had woven began to unravel completely. Sebastian was emotionally wrecked but relieved. He spent every free moment with Alice making up for the time he didn't know what she was suffering. One night after tucking the girl in, he came down to the living room where I was reading. "Mom, I need to talk to you," he said, sitting beside me. "Tell me, son. I feel so guilty. I brought that woman into our lives. I endangered your home, your well-being, even my own daughter's safety. How could I have been so blind?" I closed my book and took his hands. Sebastian Claudia was a professional con artist. She spent 3 years building a perfect facade. She fooled all of us. Don't blame yourself for loving someone who turned out to be different from who she claimed to be. But the signs were there. Her questions about the house from the beginning, her insistence on moving in here. I wanted to believe I had found love. And that's human, I told him gently. We all want to believe in love, in family, in the good intentions of people. Claudia exploited that vulnerability. But the important thing is that when you learned the truth, you acted correctly. You protected your daughter and you protected me. Will you ever be able to forgive me? He asked, his voice breaking. There is nothing to forgive. You are my son. I love you unconditionally. What happened made us stronger, more aware. Now we know what we're capable of when our family is in danger. Sebastian hugged me. I don't know what I would have done without you, Mom. Without your strength, your intelligence in documenting everything, your patience. You're incredible. I laughed softly. I'm just a 70-year-old woman who wasn't going to let anyone steal what she built with decades of work. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Sebastian asked, Do you think Alice will be okay after everything she heard, what she saw? The psychological abuse? Alice is strong, I answered with certainty. She's 6, but she showed more courage than many adults. With love therapy and time, she will recover. I already spoke with Paul about finding a good child psychologist for her. Thank you, Mom, for everything. The following week, Paul updated us on the case. Claudia is cooperating with the prosecutors. She knows the evidence against her is overwhelming, so she's trying to negotiate a reduced sentence in exchange for testifying against Fabian and the crooked doctor. What kind of sentence are we talking about? Sebastian asked. Even with cooperation, she's looking at 5 to 8 years in prison. The charges are multiple and serious. Fraud, conspiracy, forgery, child abuse threats. The judge is not going to be lenient. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief that Claudia couldn't hurt us for a long time. Sadness that Alice would grow up knowing her mother was in prison. And the divorce? I asked. Paul nodded. Considerably fast-tracked given the circumstances. Sebastian will have the divorce finalized in about 3 months. Claudia isn't fighting anything. She has no legal basis to claim anything after it was proven the marriage was fraudulent from the start. What about the alimony she was demanding? Completely denied. In fact, the judge ordered her to pay restitution to you, Evelyn, for the emotional distress and legal fees. Obviously, she has no money to pay now, but the debt will be on her record. It was justice. Not perfect because the pain caused could never be fully erased, but it was justice. In the weeks that followed, life slowly began to return to normal. Sebastian and Alice continued to live with me. He had decided it made no sense to look for another apartment. If you don't mind, Mom, I'd like to stay. This house is big, there's room for everyone, and Alice is happy here. Besides, I like knowing you have company. I would love for you to stay, I answered honestly. This house has been too empty for too long. Having you here brings it back to life. Alice began therapy with a psychologist specializing in childhood trauma. Dr. Martinez was a warm, patient woman who knew how to earn my granddaughter's trust. After a few sessions, she called me to talk. Mrs. Evelyn Alice is processing what happened very well. She is a resilient child. What impresses me most is her understanding that recording those videos was important. She told me she did it because she wanted to protect you. That sense of family loyalty and bravery at her age is extraordinary. Will she be okay long-term? I asked with worry. With the support she has from you and her father, yes. She will need time to fully understand what happened with her mother, especially as she gets older and understands the implications. But she has a solid foundation of love and security. That's the most important thing. I felt relieved. My biggest fear had been that Alice would be permanently traumatized by Claudia's actions. A month after the hearing, we received news that Claudia had accepted a plea bargain. She would plead guilty to all charges in exchange for a 6-year sentence. With good behavior, she might be out in 4. What happens when she gets out? I asked Paul, concerned. The permanent restraining order will still be in effect. She cannot come near you or your property. As for Alice, when Claudia is released, she would have to petition the court for any type of visitation. Given the documented abuse, it would be supervised and limited, if it's granted at all. And if she tries to contact you, it would be a violation of the order. She'd go right back to prison. Claudia knows this. My guess is once she's out, she'll probably disappear. Start a new life somewhere else far from the reminders of her failure here. I hoped so. Not for me, but for Alice. My granddaughter deserved peace. The sentencing hearing was brief. Claudia appeared in an orange prison jumpsuit. No makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked so different from the glamorous woman I had met 3 years ago. When the judge asked if she had anything to say before he passed sentence, she stood up. I want to apologize to Evelyn, to Sebastian, and especially to my daughter Alice. I have no excuse for what I did. I was selfish, cruel, and manipulative. I destroyed a family that had opened its arms to me. I deserve every day of the sentence I am about to receive. She sounded sincere, but I could no longer trust anything that came out of her mouth. The judge sentenced her to 6 years in federal prison. Mrs. Claudia, I hope you use this time to reflect deeply on your actions and the people you hurt. When you are released, you will have to carry the consequences of your decisions for the rest of your life. They led her away in handcuffs. It was the last time I ever saw her. Sandra organized a small celebration at my house that night. A few friends from the book club came, neighbors who had been witnesses in the case, and of course Paul, who had become more than our lawyer. He was a family friend now. To Evelyn, Sandra toasted, raising her wine glass. The strongest woman I know. She faced adversity with grace, intelligence, and determination. She taught us that age is just a number and that it's never too late to fight for what's right. Everyone cheered. I felt overwhelmed by the affection and support. Thank you, everyone, I said, my voice emotional. This has been the hardest year of my life, but it also taught me what I'm capable of. It taught me that I have wonderful people by my side, and it taught me that the truth always finds a way to come out. Alice, who had been playing in the corner, ran over and hugged my legs. I love you, Grandma. You're my hero. Those words from Alice filled my heart in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. I knelt down to her level and stroked her soft hair. And you are mine, my love. You were so brave. Without you, without those videos you recorded, maybe things would have been very different. Is Mommy coming back? Alice asked in a small voice. It was the question I had been dreading, but I knew it would come eventually. No, sweetie. Your mommy did very bad things, and she has to be away for a long, long time. But you have Daddy, you have me, and we have so much love to give you. Is that okay? Alice thought for a moment, then nodded. That's okay. Mommy scared me sometimes. You never scare me, Grandma. I held her tight, so grateful that my granddaughter understood in her own way what had happened. The months passed. Fall gave way to winter and then to spring. Life found a new rhythm. Sebastian got a promotion at work, which meant a better income, but also some nights working from home. Alice started first grade and came home every afternoon excitedly telling me about her classes and her new friends. I returned to my routines. Book club on Tuesdays, the market on Thursdays, but now with the added joy of dropping Alice off and picking her up from school, helping her with her homework, baking cookies together on weekends. The house that had been so empty after Robert's death was now overflowing with life again. Children's laughter filled the halls. The refrigerator was covered in Alice's drawings. The dining table was always set for 3. It was everything I had wanted, without knowing I needed it. One April afternoon, Sandra came over for coffee, as she often did now. We sat in the garden enjoying the warm spring sun. You know, Sandra said, looking at the roses that had begun to bloom, when all this started, I was afraid you wouldn't get through it. Claudia attacked your home, your security, your family. I thought it would break you. There were moments when I thought it would break me too, I admitted, especially when I couldn't see Alice, when Sebastian was so confused, when it felt like no one believed me. But then I realized something. What's that? That I had survived worse. I lost Robert, the love of my life. I raised Sebastian alone. I faced tough financial years when he was little. I've overcome illness, loss, disappointment. Claudia was just another storm, and I knew how to survive storms. Sandra smiled. "You are stronger than you know, Evelyn. You always have been." "The funny thing is," I continued, "Claudia thought my age was a weakness. She thought because I was older I'd be easy to manipulate, easy to fool. She didn't understand that making it to 70 means you've seen a lot, learned a lot, survived a lot. She didn't just underestimate me, she underestimated the wisdom that comes with age. And she paid the price for that arrogance," Sandra added. "Have you heard anything about her?" "Paul keeps me informed. She's in a federal prison 3 hours from here. Apparently she's taking education classes while serving her time. Part of me hopes she really does change for her own sake, but most of me is just grateful she's far away." "And Sebastian? How is he handling everything?" "Better every day. He's in therapy too. It's helping him process the betrayal, the guilt, everything. He's even started dating someone, though very cautiously this time." Sandra laughed. "I imagine he does a thorough background check on anyone he meets now." "I asked him to introduce me to his new friend before things get serious," I said with a smile. "I'll be personally vetting her intentions." "You're a terrifying mother-in-law now," Sandra joked. "Not terrifying, protective. There's a difference." We laughed together, enjoying the light-hearted moment after so many months of tension. Paul had also become a frequent visitor. He sometimes came for Sunday dinner. Alice adored him, calling him Uncle Paul. One evening, as he helped me clean up after dinner, he said, "Evelyn, I worked on your case pro bono, but even if I had charged my full rates, it wouldn't have been enough payment for what I learned from you." "What did you learn?" I asked, surprised. "That you should never underestimate anyone based on their age or appearance. That justice sometimes requires patience and strategy, not just direct confrontation. And that the strongest people are often the ones who boast the least about their strength." I was deeply touched. "Paul, you saved my home, my reputation, my family. I should be thanking you." "We saved each other," he said with a warm smile. "That's how true friendship works." 2 months later, we got the news that Sebastian's divorce was officially final. There were no legal ties left between him and Claudia. That night, Sebastian, Alice, and I went out to dinner to celebrate. We went to Alice's favorite restaurant, one with bright yellow tablecloths and cheerful music. "A toast," Sebastian said, raising his water glass since Alice couldn't have wine, and he'd decided to join her. "To new beginnings, to real family, and to the most incredible woman I know, my mother who protected us all, even when we didn't know we needed protecting." We clinked our glasses. Alice laughed and asked if she could order dessert. Life was simple again. Simple and sweet. One summer afternoon, almost a year after all the chaos, I was sitting in my garden reading, when Alice came running out of the house. "Grandma, Grandma, the teacher says we have to write about our hero for class. Can I write about you?" "About me?" I asked, surprised. "Sweetie, there are so many more interesting heroes. Astronauts, scientists, activists." "But you're my hero," Alice insisted, climbing into my lap. "You fought the villain, and you won. Like in the movies. And you protected me." I felt tears sting my eyes. "My love, I'm not a hero. I'm just a grandmother who loves her family." "That's exactly what makes you a hero," Alice said, with the simple logic of a 7-year-old. Maybe she was right. Maybe heroism wasn't about capes and superpowers. Maybe it was about getting up every day and fighting for the people you love even when you're scared. Especially when you're scared. That night, after helping Alice with her essay about heroes, I went up to my room. I sat in front of the mirror, the same mirror where I had gotten ready for the trial almost a year ago. I looked at my reflection. Gray hair wrinkles around my eyes, hands that showed decades of work. But I saw something else, too. I saw strength. I saw resilience. I saw a survivor. I thought about everything that had happened. How Claudia almost destroyed everything I had built. How I came so close to losing my house, my dignity, my family. But here I was, still standing, still fighting, still loving. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sandra. "Coffee tomorrow at 10. I have juicy gossip from the book club." I smiled and typed back, "I'll be there." Life went on, simple, ordinary, beautiful. I went downstairs and found Sebastian in the living room watching TV. "Everything okay, Mom?" he asked. "Everything is perfect, son." And it was true. For the first time in a long time, everything was perfect. Not perfect in the sense that there were no problems or challenges, but perfect in the sense that we were together safe, loving each other. That was all that really mattered. Weeks later, on a particularly beautiful morning, Alice and I were having breakfast together in the garden. She was eating her pancakes while telling me about a science project at school. "Grandma," she said suddenly, "do you think I'll ever have to forgive Mommy?" The question took me by surprise. "Why do you ask that, my love? Dr. Martinez says forgiving doesn't mean what someone did was okay. It means you don't let it hurt you anymore." "But I don't know if I can." I took her small hand in mine. "Alice, forgiveness is a very personal thing. No one can tell you when or if you should forgive someone. What I can tell you is this. Don't let what your mom did turn you into someone bitter. You are a sweet, smart, brave girl. Hold on to those qualities no matter what. Did you forgive Mommy?" I thought carefully about my answer. "I'm in the process. Some days are easier than others. What helps me is remembering that while Claudia is in prison, paying for what she did, I am right here in my garden having breakfast with my favorite granddaughter. She didn't win. Love won, and that is the best revenge of all. Living well." Alice nodded thoughtfully. "I think I understand." That afternoon, while Alice played in her room and Sebastian worked in his makeshift office upstairs, I sat on the living room sofa with a hot cup of tea. I looked around my house. The walls that had witnessed so much pain now echoed with laughter again. The spaces Claudia had tried to steal were now filled with genuine love. I thought about the woman I was a year ago, scared, attacked, questioning my own sanity. And I looked at the woman I was now, stronger, wiser, more confident. The suffering had not been in vain. It had taught me what I was capable of. It had shown me who my true allies were. It had given me a deeper relationship with my son and my granddaughter. My phone vibrated, a message from Paul. "Claudia petitioned for visitation with Alice, denied by the judge. Thought you'd want to know." I replied, "Thank you for keeping me informed." And I continued to drink my tea calm. Claudia would keep trying. She would keep looking for ways to reclaim something she had lost. But she didn't scare me anymore. I had faced her worst, and I had come out victorious. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Sebastian appeared holding Alice's hand. "Mom, Alice wants to have a bonfire in the yard and roast marshmallows. Are you in—" "Of course," I said, smiling. We went out to the backyard. Sebastian built the fire while Alice and I hunted for marshmallow sticks. We sat around the fire watching the flames dance as the sky slowly darkened. "This is my favorite place in the world," Alice said with satisfaction, her marshmallow perfectly golden. "Mine too," I said, looking at my family. And it was true. After everything that had happened, after the betrayal, the pain, the legal battle, here I was, in my garden, in my house, with the people who truly mattered. Claudia had tried to take everything from me. Instead, she had given me something priceless, the absolute certainty that I was stronger than I ever imagined. Today, I am alone in the sense that I have no husband, no romantic partner. But for the first time in years, I am at peace. I have my son, I have my granddaughter, I have my home, I have my dignity. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that when someone tried to destroy me, I stood up and fought back. And I won. Not with violence, not with revenge, but with truth evidence, patience, and love. That I decided as I watched Alice laugh with her father under the stars was the sweetest victory of all.